normally we cover people based in New York, so it's like always Broadway. And one of the things I've realized is that when people think of theater, they think of Broadway and the West End, but it seems like LA actually has a pretty vibrant theater scene. Like there's actually really a lot going on.
We have a huge theater scene. The majority of the theaters have 99 seats or less, which is why you don't hear about them as much, but there are hundreds of them. And there are some of them that do really amazing work. Some of the best work I've done has been in the smaller houses. So we have very few mid-sized houses, and then we have Center Theater Group, which is like the big house in town.
So they have the small theaters like 100, and then what are the big theaters?
You know, I do a lot of my work at the Taper, which is like 700, 750. I have a show that opens there on Sunday. And the Ahmanson has 1,800. And then Center Theater Group also owns the Kirk Douglas, which has 250. And then there's the Geffen is kind of mid-sized, and the Colony is mid-sized, and Pasadena Playhouse. And then pretty much everything else is under 99 seats.
So you're a California native, or are you from?
I grew up in Michigan.
In Michigan?
Yeah.
When you went out to CalArts, though, to get your master's?
Yep.
So why did you decide to go to California, and why did you decide to stay in terms of doing theater there?
I went out because of the sound design program at CalArts. I wanted to study with John Gottlieb. CalArts focuses on kind of the avant-garde and the unusual theater, and I was much more interested in that than places like CCM that focuses on musicals, things like that. I was really kind of interested in the kind of work that CalArts does. So I went to CalArts because of their program and John Gottlieb. I decided to stay because I just fell in love with Los Angeles. I love to drive, which is a necessity in Los Angeles. And I don't like big cities, and Los Angeles feels like lots of small communities all together in one big city. So I live in Glendale. It's a small community. I know my neighbors. I can walk to the grocery store, but I also have access to all the perks of a big city too. I've got the museums and the theater and the culture and the beach and the mountains, which is lovely. So I just fell in love with Los Angeles itself and the theater scene there. So.
I mean, in terms of like having little communities, do you feel that same way about theater? That there are little theater communities that are all over the place?
Yes.
Are there different scenes distinct to different regions, or is it kind of just all spread out?
No, most of the small theaters are focused in Hollywood, so they're all kind of in the same area. There's a few out on the west side, and there's a couple in Pasadena. Boston Court is out in Pasadena. Noise Within is out there. But for the most part, they're kind of focused around Hollywood and downtown. So, but the theater community is very tight-knit. We all know each other. We all work together. It's a great community, really supportive.
Now, before we went to college, what were you studying? What did you study undergrad?
In undergrad, I ended up getting a major in theater, but I went in as a physics major.
That's an interesting switch.
Yeah. My work study was in the theater because I had done theater in high school, and I found that I was sitting in my physics classes, like, waiting to get out so I could go to work at the theater. And it was like I liked physics, but I loved theater. And I made the decision my second year that I just needed to do what I loved. So
is any physics applied to theater at all? So any of your sound design work or anything?
Yeah, I mean, like, certainly sound design of all of the categories. Like, we use an enormous amount of physics in, like, the acoustics of the room, and also the acoustic, like, the way that sound affects the body and the person and your mood and your all of that. Like, that's all kind of science-based in a way. It's how the brain works and how the brain functions things. And then certainly, like, where you hang the speakers and how you tune the microphones is all acoustics and physics. So.
Well, it's interesting, too, because I think about it, like, LA is probably the same as New York. Like, Broadway is sort of big, but it's not. There's certain scene you get to know people. And I'm assuming, too, it's like, a lot of people read stage directions or professionals, but there's also a lot of high school and college students who read it, and I'm kind of curious. I mean, obviously you have to navigate certain politics when you're in a particular scene. I mean,
Sure.
It's like, if you were to give advice to up-and-coming sound designers, what would you say in terms of not only trying to build up their craft, but also get into a certain scene and get work?
I mean, for me, it's definitely, like, someone actually just said this recently, and I was like, that's a perfect way of putting it up. Like, I tend to hire the people that I'd love to go out to lunch with. because my assistant, I'm going to be spending a lot of time with them, and I want the type of people that I enjoy talking to. And so I think as a young designer, it's important to get out there and shake hands and meet the other designers and just walk up to them and stick out your hand and say, I'm an assistant, here I am, I'd love to get to know you, can we have coffee one day? One of the women that assists me most, and she's actually co-designer on a project I just worked on, she walked up to me at an opening night and said, "You're Cricket Myers, my name's Becca, I was told I need to get to know you." And I was like, okay, like random. But we went out and had coffee, and I ran into her at a couple of other events, and the next time I needed an assistant, I called her and was like, want to come over? And that was 5 years ago, and she still works with me anytime I can get her. Most of the time she's too busy for me now, but she's got her own work. But I use her. She's the first person I'll call. But it was she just walked up and stuck out her hand and said, I want to get to know you.